Weirding Way Media.
Welcome to the On Seagal podcast, your podcast for everything and anything Steven Seagal. I am your host, Trevor Gumble, and with me, as always, is my lovely, lovely co-host and Gomez Adams cosplayer.
Yeah, that's true. My hair is the wrong color and much too long at this point. Like millennial Gomez Adams. And that's the look I'm cultivating, is a millennial Gomez Adams.
Like the fan poster with Johnny Depp in it?
No.
Gomez Adams?
Johnny Depp is... Oh, what? Oh. I mean, at some point in our history of this business, that would have been a casting decision that would have made total sense. I don't think anymore. I don't think anymore.
I mean... Are you talking about like...
Oscar Isaacs is who I would cast, but that's who they cast in the movie as the voice of.
Yeah, it was a terrible movie.
Well,
the first one, at least. I haven't seen the second one.
I haven't seen any of them. There are one set of Addams Family movies that are for me, and those are the ones from the 90s that Barry Sonnenfeld. Yeah.
You can't... Okay, when they tried to do a third one with Tim Curry and Daryl Hannah...
I kind of liked it. I saw it way too many times as a kid. It was one of those VHSs. It was one of those VHSs we just happened to own.
Yeah, well, it didn't have like its own purple cover or some shit like that.
Something, and then there was like, Tim Curry was Gomez, Daryl Hannah was Morticia.
I mean, Tim Curry as Gomez was a good effort.
There was somebody in the movie who was a villain who's just like a character actor. It was probably like Michael McKean or something. I don't know. There was some other character actor. Maybe it was Ed Begley Jr.
Yeah, I think Ed Begley Jr. was in it.
That may have been. That may be.
Estelle Harris was in it. The late Estelle Harris, who we just lost recently.
Yeah, but we're not here to talk about that.
No, we're not here to talk about the Addams Family. You got to introduce yourself, man.
Yeah, I'm Chris Dashiu, but I'm not Steven Seagal, and I didn't spend 24 hours with Steven Seagal either.
No, we didn't, and
which is a video that's been like making its way around the internet recently. We both watched it separate from one another, apparently.
I didn't watch the whole thing. I only saw parts.
Oh, I did. It's two parts.
Okay. Yeah.
I will say it's interesting. I think our perception of Seagal is a valid one, and I think that our belief in who he thinks he is a valid one. Yeah. But it's really what I think is very interesting. And again, I'm just taking the bad stuff away, just for the time being. I'm not giving him a pass. I'm not saying what he did is okay, but just removing all the things that he did, all the allegations. Mm-hmm. It is very clear to me in watching that footage that was put together that Steven Seagal, and I've said it before on this show, and I feel rather vindicated, Steven Seagal is a master Aikido instructor, practitioner. He knows what he's doing. Watching him literally just... And like, he's like, I can get you like this, I can get you like this, I can get you... And he's just holding the guy's hand, and he's just manipulating it. This guy's hand, I can get you here, I can do this. And it's like, you know what? It does come through in the early movies, not so much in the new stuff, but in something like what we're going to talk about on this episode. Yeah. I think he's still that version of himself that he perceives himself to be. I think is these early movies are the closest it ever gets to his believed perception of himself.
Well, what I got from the video, he still knows what he's doing. It's really kind of fascinating to see him do what he does best and talk about it. Right. When he talks about Aikido or any martial arts that he knows, it's kind of fascinating to hear him discuss it because he has a passion for it. Yeah. This is what he loves to do.
And he gets rather high level with it. He gets pretty metaphysical and rather insightful. Yeah. And is he regurging what other people are saying? Maybe. Again, I'm not a martial artist expert, so I don't know. But he's saying, the way he's saying it and the things that he's saying, I believe, like you said, with full conviction, this guy is a legit martial arts practitioner.
Well, I think since as we've discussed on previous episodes, for him, coming from the video, it's not just physical. It's a very spiritual for him. It's almost like a religion. Yeah. He talks about it like he talks about a religion, like he's trying, like a Christian trying to get someone to come to Christ. This is a guy who's trying to emphasize the glory of Aikido and all that stuff.
And the beliefs that come along with it. I mean, it's a belief system like anything else. It really is.
Yeah. I mean, the guy talking to him, this guy who was doing the thing isn't just some random, chump who doesn't know anything. This is a guy who does karate professional.
He is also a martial arts practitioner. Yeah.
Yeah. So, I mean, it's not like some random chump off the street with Steven Seagal just, making it too easy for him. This is a guy who actually knows what he's doing. And Steven Seagal still has the ability to take him down. And it kind of...
And what you say is interesting to hear him explain how he uses the parts of his body the way he does, because Aikido is very much about how samurais were protecting themselves on the battlefield. And so it's utilizing your arms and legs like weapons, like literally like weapons, not like, oh, your hands are figuratively weapons. No, you're literally supposed to use your leg like a spear, your arm like a sword or a dagger to use it. And he does it in the video. You see him with his hand, and he presses it against the guy really hard. And the guy's like, holy shit, that really hurt. And it's I work on this power and the ability to do this every day to sharpen my skills. I don't know. It painted Steven Seagal in a much more sympathetic light than I would say a lot of things that I have seen about Steven Seagal in the last decade. Again, everybody has those Steven Seagal stories that give them some level of credibility and clout. We joked about it with Richard on the Under Siege 2 episode. Yeah. But that's the thing now, is clowning on Steven Seagal. And then you see him and he's just this kind of overweight older guy who is just he's pontificating a little bit, but again, he knows what he's talking about. I know that much.
I didn't get the feeling watching the video that he was bullshitting or posturing for the camera.
No, he seemed very genuine. It's very strange.
Yeah, and I mean, like you said, there have been many stories. There have been many,
Richard told one. I mean, we've heard all this. You can find so many of these stories. Again, everybody seemingly, like Richard said, everybody has a Seagal story at this point.
Yeah, but we're not talking about Steven Seagal as a person. We're talking about Steven Seagal as an Aikido master.
Right.
I mean, his knowledge of Aikido is kind of non-debatable.
Right. It's almost I don't know anyone who speaks as broadly about that as he is able to. He might be one of the better experts on it, I would assume.
But I think in a way it kind of makes it sadder that he hasn't put more effort into his films.
I will, I will say this. Honest to God. Mm-hmm. And this may color the way this show goes from here on out. Okay. The best way to watch these movies may be as Steven Seagal is reluctant to be in them.
Okay.
And I say that because he seems rather charismatic in this video when he's talking to the guy. And is he rather matter of fact? Sure, but he's also, I think he's rather charismatic. Not as much as he was in the 90s, but again, with a level of knowledge on a topic and an ability to speak with confidence comes a level of charisma. Mm-hmm. And I think the thing that's kind of sad for me is realizing that Seagal actually has that ability to be charismatic and be kind of compelling. And then realizing that, I think when he's in these movies, he just doesn't. It's just not. It's not what he wants to be doing. He wants to be doing something else, and this may just be a means to an end.
Well, you were seeing the Seagal that we had in the early 90s, and you were seeing the personality that made him a juggernaut for a couple years.
He was doing Aikido in all those movies.
Yeah.
And then where did he stop doing Aikido? Where did he stop? What was the movie where he stopped? It was Under Siege.
Yeah, I was around Under Siege. Well, he still did a little bit, I think, in Fire Down Below. Or no. Was it Fire Down Below?
On Deadly Ground.
On Deadly Ground. I keep getting those two mixed up.
Well, we technically haven't even watched one of them yet.
Yeah, we haven't watched one of them yet.
Technically.
But in later films, he started to get more gun.
Right. And I do wonder, and again, I haven't seen the interviews with him talking about it. I've seen the interview where he says, I'm not using guns anymore. But there is part of me that wonders that at this point where it's they're offering me these scripts. Okay, a bunch of gun shit. Okay, whatever, fine. Means to an end. But again, he did fight George St. Pierre hand to hand. And I will remind you, what was the best of the recent movies of his that we watched? What was the entire premise of that movie?
It was him doing Aikido.
In attrition.
In attrition, yeah. I mean, the scene with him and George St. Pierre showed glimmer, no pun intended, of the Seagal we've had.
Yeah. And again, not believable when it's a 65-year-old man beating up George St. Pierre. But But I think watch that video on YouTube and tell me that you couldn't figure out a way to make that believable.
But you know what? I think what it is that watching him do his Aikido is kind of fascinating. It's kind of interesting.
I'm with you. That's what I'm saying. Like, if he never got wrapped up in the movies, who knows what he would be doing?
Not to sound pretentious, but it was almost like ballet, because the way he moves very, 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 very smooth and very, very.
He's a fucking big dude. Big dudes don't move like that.
And that's what makes me kind of like I don't want to body shame the guy, believe me, but it's more of a believable for a thinner guy doing Aikido fighting someone than it is someone his size. And I'm not saying it. I believe me, I don't know Aikido, and I'm a fluffy motherfucker.
I would actually disagree with you. I think Aikido is almost better for people who are your size and my size because it is a purely defensive martial arts style, which is being used to defend yourself. Because I probably, like yourself, don't tend to be the aggressor in these kinds of situations. Someone else is. Mm-hmm. And Steven Seagal, I mean, you hear him talk about it in that interview. He's like, I don't want fights to get any further than, like, my interaction needs to be the end of the fight. And again, like, we've been talking about that in these movies. Mm-hmm. Like, Aikido is not that. I think the ultimate problem, and let's talk about Glimmer Man now. Mm-hmm. Aikido is not made for the screen. I think that needs to be, like, we just need to get that out in the open. Aikido is not a flashy martial arts style. And it not being flashy, it does not allow for, because Steven Seagal wants to practice Aikido, and I don't blame him. Mm-hmm. That's the thing. I mean, they probably were like, all right, can you just do some fucking hokey shit? And you and I both know he was like, what? No.
That probably made him feel really fucking insulted.
Right, and that's my point. And so Aikido is such a defensive fighting style. He explains it as such. He's explaining it, not making excuses for his film career. He's explaining it like the Aikido master he is. It's about ending the fight, essentially before the fight can get any further than the other punch being thrown. And what have we fucking complained about in every single one of these goddamn movies, Trevor?
Not enough Seagal fighting. Not enough.
Not enough back and forth. I think it boils down to that.
I mean, they're not using Seagal like they should be using Seagal.
But that's because they can't use Seagal the way they want to use him, because his martial arts style is almost counterproductive to what they're trying to do.
Well, because because Aikido is not meant to be these long-term fights that are in movies now. It's meant to be short and that's done. It.
Yeah.
One and done, you're gone.
He can end your life in multiple ways with multiple different angles of attack that ultimately, most of the time, it would seem sever your brain stem with his bare hand.
But that's not cinematic. That's just like when you go to an action movie where there's fight scenes. You don't want a fight scene that's like 2 minutes long, done. You want a fight scene that's very like cinematic.
It's a microcosm of the movie in and of itself. It has rises and falls in the fight scene. The best ones, like we talked about this last time, the fight scene in Commando. Yeah. There's a back and forth. There's a push and a pull. There's a give and a take. That's the best fight scene, is it has, all right, the villain's going to get his, now the hero's going to get his. And then back and forth. And just as you think the villain's about to kill the hero turns it around. Like those are the best ones. With this, it's like, nope, but that's the intent. Like, I guess I can't fault them in a way. I don't. But it's not inherently cinematic, like you've said. It's just.
It is what it is. I mean,
that's why they added the guns, I guess. Like, all right, Steve. Well, we can't really. You don't. And again, you and I both know it was not. We can't. It's you won't. You will not allow us to let the fight go further because you want to practice Aikido believably on screen.
Yes, and anyone who knows Aikido, if they tried to lengthen an Aikido fight, they'd be like, this is ridiculous.
He cares too much about his Aikido honor and practitionership of Aikido.
He feels like it would
to get in the way of being. Aikido. Yeah, he would not let that get in the. He's not going to let a movie being entertaining get in the way of him practicing Aikido. And which I give him props for that, but again, like, it does not contribute to and or set up the audience for an inherently entertaining action movie.
Another problem is, I mean, like we said, he's used guns a lot in his films lately.
Yeah.
The fact is that it's really hard to make a gunfight cinematic. It's really hard to make a gunfight, very interesting to watch, unless you're like John Woo or like Robert Rodriguez or arguably Quentin Tarantino. to make a gunfight interesting, you have to. And
I don't know if I honestly, I was worried you were going to say Tarantino.
I said arguably.
Would you argue that, or would you argue against it?
I'd probably more argue against it. I'm thinking more Wu and Rodriguez than Tarantino.
I'm with you.
But
John Woo for sure. Rodriguez for sure.
To make a gun, like in his films, the gunfights have been just not interesting, not just kind of boring.
Very matter of fact.
But then again, that's a lot of action films lately. Making a gunfight
at least there's not quick cuts.
True. But I mean, Seagal doesn't do well with a gun. He does well with his arms and his fists.
Right. He's
in that to make your film more interesting.
But again, the problem is unless you're throwing hundreds of guys at him, there's no believable way. You have to literally isolate the villains until the end of the movie, because the moment they get into a fist fight with Seagal, they have to die. Yeah, that is the Aikido philosophy: is I have to incapacitate you before the fight gets started.
Well, let's think about how the villains have died in his films. Even back to the early films. They didn't necessarily die by his hand. The one guy died falling out a window onto a fucking car. Tommy Lee Jones got blown up with the fucking ship. I mean...
Well, Tommy Lee Jones had his head Stu Macher style thrown into a CRT TV. Michael Caine just was there when it exploded. Under Siege.
So you see what I'm talking about.
Have we talked about Under Siege 2 at this point?
Under Siege 2, we talked about it with a. But
at this point in the timeline, it's come out.
Oh, right? I don't know if we. I don't think we have, because this is after. No, this is after Under Siege 2, because we have.
Okay.
And Under Siege 2,
he doesn't. I don't. That's the thing. Like I just we're complaining about things in Steven Seagal movies that I think are just like that's what makes it a Steven Seagal movie. Frankly.
Yeah.
Like really, like at the moment, the anticipation is not matched by the climax. Like the anticipation of Seagal getting his hands on the people is better than the moment he gets his hands on them, because in every one of these movies when he does get his hands on someone, it is literally like that. Like Henry Silva is dead the moment Seagal lays his hands on him. Like it's over. Like it's not a question.
I forget. How did William Forsythe die?
He got him with the corkscrew.
Yeah. That's not Aikido.
Bill Sadler didn't die.
No, he let him he made him he did not take him to the blood bank.
He did not. I don't know. I guess Seagal's just strange in that way. He's just a strange guy. He's a strange cat. I mean,
I would love to have seen a film where one of his Aikido moves basically paralyzed a guy or something. Just take the guy out like that. But then again, you're right. It's not a very long fight. It would be 1-2 minutes. And it's over.
If that. I mean, again, you saw how quick he was in this video.
I mean, it's not even a minute. I mean, say what you will about Seagal and his reputation within the action community, within the the rumors about him challenging Sylvester Stallone or Arnold Schwarzenegger to a fight and then pussying out. Take all that away. The guy knows.
Do you believe that though?
I don't know. I wasn't there. But I've heard stories. But then again, that's just stories, and I can't speak to the validity of rumors.
And that's why I say the thing about Seagal that I do, which is like everybody has a Seagal story now. Even if and again, how much validity are there to some of them? I'm sure there is a large amount of validity to a lot of them.
Ton of validity.
But there's also probably people who have embellished encounters and other things. I'm not defending him, but again,
it's more storytelling. It's more interesting to embellish than to just say,
But at the same time, it's also easier to do that to someone who is not going to fight back.
Well, he's in Russia, so he won't do anything.
But that's my point. Would people be telling those stories about someone who's currently working in the industry?
Not a clue. Not a clue.
No, they wouldn't.
I mean, that's why John Leguizamo.
That's why they're doing. But they're they're just trafficking in these stories, and again, I'm not bemoaning it. I just don't understand the point.
I think it's just they're interesting to listen to, and they're interesting to tell.
At some point, at some point they become
true or not. I'm not saying they're lies. I'm not saying they're lies. I'm not saying they're truth. I'm saying they just make for an interesting tale. I think
the only one that I can verify is true is Richard's.
Well, yeah, because he was there, and we know Richard.
Right, I know Richard.
Yeah, he knows what he's talking about. He does.
Why would Richard lie? And again, I'm not even sure Richard. I'm not even sure. I'm sure Richard was so floored. I mean, the way he tells that story.
I mean, what does he have to gain?
Again, that's my question. Some people, it's just like a clout thing. Like, oh, you've got a Seagal story. Like, yeah.
Let me hear it. Yeah.
Yeah. But you know what though? Richard didn't write this movie. This movie being the Glimmer Man. But you know what? This movie, Trevor,
Yes.
is pretty funny.
It is pretty entertaining. I mean, it's not the best Seagal film, but it
might be up there for me, though. I'm going to be honest with you.
I do. It's one of the Seagal films where I feel like he's actually charismatic as a person. Like there's more of a personality in his character than his later films. Like he's actually putting effort into making someone a likable protagonist. And also this is adding a little more spirituality into a character, because I mean his character is a Buddhist who does not use weapons or fight because it's against his religion, which, you know, if you're a cop, why would you be a cop who doesn't like fighting? But that's
right. And again, this movie is the movie where Seagal is like, I'm not killing my villains anymore.
Yeah. And I mean,
which stuck for what, like a couple years?
Yeah, it didn't stick for that long. He's teamed up with Keenan Ivory Wayans, who I think is hilarious. I love Keenan Ivory Wayans.
And I think that might be the smartest thing in this entire movie. And nobody has done it up until this point. You realize that?
Giving him a comedic foil?
Buddy, like a comedic sidekick. They've tried.
Well, I think they needed the balance. You know,
they gave us Erica Eleniak, but she wasn't funny.
No, she was. They
gave us Katherine Heigl. I guess they gave us Morris Chestnut.
Yeah, Katherine Heigl didn't do much in Under Siege 2. Morris Chestnut was.
He's like a pre-fully formed version of this character.
Yeah.
He's where the Keenan Ivory Wayans character ends up becoming.
I think they were trying to more humanize Seagal and kind of, make it this movie. I mean, it's not like it's an action comedy, but it's a little dark.
It's a buddy cop movie.
Yeah, but it's a little darker than most. Steven Seagal, I mean, has some great scenes of fighting, like the scene at the restaurant where he's trying to talk to that guy and the guy's on the phone trying to take a reservation, and Seagal just barges in there and just takes every guy out, basically, with his hands, which is very interesting to watch. I mean, it's a trope in Seagal films, henchman number one, henchman number two. They just run at him one at a time, and he takes them out one at a time instead of going at him as a crowd. But yeah, it's a fun movie. That's one of Seagal's more entertaining recent films. Recent, a relative term. I mean, Keenan Ivory Wayans really adds more energy and more charisma to the film, and Seagal is really trying in this film. Like he has a couple times where he's trying to be a little more kind of joyful and a little more silly.
I would agree. I think for me right now, this is the best version of Seagal that I've seen, and I would
agree with that. That's a Seagal that I would want to see more of.
I will tell you why. I think it's because the ability for him to finally have someone that can play off of how fucking weird he is. That's the thing about this movie. They really are essentially just having us have Keenan Ivory Wayans and Steven Seagal playing themselves.
Yes, there is no pretension here.
Like, that's what this is. It's Steven Seagal kind of just playing a parody of himself, like of the characters that he's played, which is effectively just him in every movie.
It's almost if I'm kind of calling out Seagal tropes,
right,
as a character,
right?
Like the scene where they're in the herbal store,
the Chinese mysticism shop,
the Chinese mysticism store, and the all these healing. What was that one healing like? Goat
deer penis. He's like, it's like it's good for vitality. He's like, what is this? Deer penis. Oh, Jesus Christ. But it's again, like, it's kind of like, it's like, yeah, we know that he's into this, like, Eastern mysticism shit. Uh-huh. Like, again, it's like shit as in like the very like pop culturized version that Steven Seagal is kind of like his Nehru jackets and all that. Like that, the stuff that he's known for, they kind of make fun of it in this movie. I appreciate that.
And Seagal, to his credit, goes along with it.
Yeah, he's great.
He's kind of really good. He's kind of playing in this. And he's come to play, and I like that. It's not him. This is Seagal actually, putting an effort into being more likable as an action star.
He's having a good time.
And unfortunately, the film just didn't do well, and that began the decline. I think if this film had done better, we would have seen more of this Seagal.
I will say, I think the big problem between the movie that I wanted this to be and the movie that this is because of how absolutely convoluted the story is.
The
story is so convoluted. The name of the movie has literally nothing to do with the plot of the movie. It is just the name with which they call Steven Seagal's character. Because, again, he's not just a cop. He is a former CIA operative who was known as the Glimmer Man because he could move through the underbrush so quickly that the only thing you would see before you died... Yeah. So... like that to me signifies that they didn't even have a clue what to do with this movie's plot. It's so convoluted.
It's really funny that the biggest character description you would get is in the fucking trailer.
Yeah.
They talk about him more. They talk about his character in the name more in the trailer than they do in the entire film.
Yeah, it's like a kind of like an offhanded comment in the movie. It's like, oh, he's, the Glimmer Man.
No, he's the Glimmer Man.
And here's the thing, like the movie starts out in a point where it's like you have Cole and Campbell, Seagal and Wayans going to find a serial killer who murders entire households. And that ends up being a total MacGuffin, and it leads to smuggling of chemical weapons into the United States from Russia that are being sold. Yeah. And the reason the family died is because they knew too much. It's like they should not have introduced this like, oh, it's actually Russian terrorists. That should have just been the two of them searching for a serial killer, because that like why isn't that enough? I guess is
what happens is. They bring in the Stephen Tobolowsky character, and immediately just nothing. One scene later, he's gone.
Yeah.
I'm like,
and that's where the whole Seagal not killing people, because his character was originally supposed to die, and then Seagal said, I don't want to kill him, so they had to fucking rewrite shit to make his character live, and then there was like overdubbing in the movie.
Why even have that plot to begin with? If you're going to make it, they made it seem like this was going to be the main plot. They're looking for this, serial killer, and that's the main plot. But I'm like, oh, okay, that's interesting. Oh, Stephen Tobolowsky is a serial killer? Oh my God, he's got him cornered in a church. I mean, how's he going to... This is only, 30 minutes into the film, if that?
Yeah.
And one scene later, Stephen Tobolowsky's character is completely gone from the film. And now we're on to a new thing.
Right, well, there's no plot. But it's somehow still sideways. It somehow still is tied into the original plot.
Well, and then we have this other kind of plot where Steven Seagal goes into this school because this kid is holding this class hostage because I think his girlfriend broke up with him or something like that. And don't they try to make that into somewhat of a plot later?
That character ties into the dad. He's the son of the dad who was also doing the killings. It's like super convoluted for seemingly no reason.
But why make him a school shooter? Of all things,
I don't, because I guess they were trying to get rid of it. Wasn't the whole thing they were trying to get rid of him?
I don't know.
The movie is so, I don't understand. The movie's so convoluted, and it ends up being that just this local businessman, corrupt asshole played by Bob Gunton of all people.
Well, is Bob Gunton. He's the villain.
Right. But he's great. I mean, Bob Gunton's great.
Yeah, he's always great. It's Bob Gunton.
Yeah, but he ends up being the main villain of the movie. And the information they get on him comes from Brian Cox, of all people. The Brian Cox role in this movie was originally supposed to be played by Tommy Lee Jones, which would have been fucking great and hilarious.
I love Brian Cox.
Brian Cox is fantastic.
Imagining Tommy Lee Jones in that role would have been so really... Because Brian Cox, his character is like, just wears a robe around a pool, kind of just...
Yeah. He's so good though.
He's an ultra rich sleaze bag.
Yeah.
Having other people do his dirty work. And I would have loved to have seen Tommy Lee Jones in that role. But Brian Cox did a great job. But I mean, that's also convoluted because you have one guy reporting to another guy who's reporting to another guy to kill these other people.
Yeah, it's
what the fuck.
Yeah, it's like they needed one. They needed one more pass on the script because there's just some kind of these weird, like you could take the character of Stephen Tobolowsky out of the movie completely. He's a MacGuffin.
Absolutely.
He's there. He's there only. Again, the problem is with that character, if you're going to introduce a character that's a false killer or
false flag,
one of two killers, because he's technically you can't introduce him and then get rid of him the next scene. You got to give the audience a couple scenes to kind of see what he's doing and kind of lead us down the wrong path.
I mean, especially if you're using an actor like Stephen Tobolowsky.
Right. Well, that's my point. It's
Stephen Tobolowsky can play this kind of character.
Yeah,
but they didn't have to make this so convoluted. they could have actually made him the character and put that scene at the very end of the film.
And I wonder, because there is that kind of weird connection where it's like Seagal, like, doesn't Brian Cox know Seagal? They know who Seagal is. Isn't there something about, that, something right?
Around that, yeah. I mean, we're not even talking about the Keenen Ivory Wayans aspect of the film.
Super weird. What a weird character.
And
he's obsessed with Casablanca. Like,
were they trying to make like a
coded
little like no, they're trying to make a Rush Hour meets Seven kind of thing? I don't know.
Well, this is pre both of those.
Was this pre Rush Hour?
Rush Hour came out in 97.
Yeah, but Seven came out in 95.
That's the thing. I think the Rush Hour thing I don't think is earned, but I would agree with you that again, that's why I was saying like it feels like it needed another pass.
Yeah.
Because there again, you said that there's the darker aspect to the movie. The serial killer, the family man, don't forget at the beginning of the movie, there is even the thing where Seagal is possibly being investigated for being the serial killer because the woman that dies was his former wife.
Yeah.
And like that, they can go nowhere with that. They go nowhere
with the framing aspect where the killer's trying to make Seagal look like the bad guy. It's like you think they're going to make it a major part of the plot. It's like, okay, now Seagal has to clear his good name with the precinct, but no, that's cleared up in like what, 5 minutes?
Yeah, it's like they just had all these ideas and said, let's just throw, instead of taking 2 or 3 ideas and fully walking down the path and developing them completely, they took like 8 ideas and just crammed them into this movie because on top of everything else, this movie is only 90 minutes and it manages to somehow tie itself into a really complex knot in 90 minutes.
It really stretched out shit to make it 90 minutes. Like without the Steven Tobolowsky scene or a lot of the other extraneous scenes, this movie would have been an hour, if that.
And again, like they could have really like taken some of these like ideas, like the serial killer idea, and really run with it and given the movie some like emotional stakes and something. Something more than what they gave us now, which is like it's like a serial killer movie with like a crime mob underworld movie with a Steven Seagal movie plus a comedy, and it's like one of these things works and the other 3 don't really.
Seagal, his past films, he's never really dealt with a serial killer. He's dealt with a mob. Yeah, he's dealt with a mob, drug dealers, gang members, shit like that.
Steven Seagal hunts a serial killer is such a good premise.
And it's a great premise. That is a fantastic
That's what
premise.
I'm saying.
And there is a terrific, exciting film in this film that wants to get out so badly, but it's hampered by such convoluted shit like Steven Tobolowsky being a red herring and, the attempted framing of Seagal and, all that other shit.
It just doesn't go in. Ultimately, it goes nowhere. And the conclusion of the film being, well, there was another serial killer who was killing people that were also associated with this company that you were running. And this company is smuggling in chemical weapons. And that's why you're killing them, is because they know. It's so fucking lame. It's just lame.
Answer me this question. Did there need to be Bob Gunton and Brian Cox? Did there need to be those two?
That's what I'm saying.
Couldn't they just had one guy? They could have combined it into one character.
Or they could have just not had that character in the movie and it just been the Steven Tobolowsky character. They added characters upon characters upon characters to scenarios that they made. They made problems for themselves that then they made worse by trying to explain it in another way that forces them to open up. That's the problem with making movies. Like you really have like 4 or 5 boxes you should be playing with, and the more boxes you add in, the more pieces you have to deal with. And at some point, like in this movie, you have 12 boxes open and half of the pieces from each box, but none of them are complete. There are no full ideas are not part of this movie's makeup at all.
I think if you were going to make Steven Tobolowsky the main serial killer, I don't think it would have been a good idea for Steven Seagal to kill him or fight him, because who is going to believe that Steven Tobolowsky is going to stand up to Steven Seagal? I mean, no offense to Steven Tobolowsky, but
Tobolowsky tried to convince Seagal to let his character die by saying he was a miserable human being who, by dying, would receive redemption and reincarnation. And Seagal was like, okay, sure. There's your answer. But again, they didn't do that.
The way Tobolowsky played it in the one scene he was in was terrific.
Yeah, he's great.
I thought Tobolowsky did a great. I'm like, that is a villain I want to see more of. That scene at the end would have been so fucking interesting to see, because this is a killer who just is a miserable son of a bitch who is just he thinks that, the only way to redeem himself is to die and all that shit. That would have been more interesting than just two businessmen hiring someone to kill people.
Yeah. No,
and, let me ask you something. Let me ask you something. If they'd taken Keenen Ivory Wayans out of this film, do you think it would have changed anything?
I don't think I would like this movie as much as I did.
No, but would the plot still have gone as it went without Keenen Ivory Wayans' character?
Sure.
Okay.
But I could ask the same question about Indiana Jones and the Raiders of the Lost Ark.
Well, that's a common agreement about the film, is that just take if Indiana Jones hadn't even been in the film, they still would have gotten the Ark of the Covenant. They still would have opened and they still would have died. So
it kind of makes that movie genius, though.
Yeah, but Harrison Ford is so charismatic and likable, and he's just a fun guy to watch do his thing.
I think without Keenen Ivory Wayans in this movie, nothing would. If you're talking from a sole plot standpoint,
that's what I mean.
Nothing would have changed. I'm talking about the other stuff. This movie is a complete mess without.
Yeah, I agree with that part.
Yeah,
I'm just talking plot standpoint.
Yeah, he does nothing to add to the plot or detract from the plot of this film.
He has a couple scenes where he's in danger, like his house gets set on fire by the killer, and he's trying to, it
blows up and it throws him out a window.
Yeah, right. Like he would have survived that shit. But it's Steven Seagal. He adds humor to the film. He gives Seagal a bit of humanity in the film because they're playing off of each other. They're playing off of each other very well. And I think I wanted to see a little bit more of that strength-wise, and I wanted to see Keenen Ivory Wayans brought into the plot more. Like I wanted him to do more than he did, which is just be, the comedic,
he's a sidekick
that, just occasionally does something,
I'm with you. No, he's a better
actor. He's a better action star. He's a better physical person than to just put him as, just a comedic foil sidekick. He's a lot better than that.
I agree 100%.
And
it's a shame. And again, that's like part of the problem with this movie is it's such a convoluted movie that they really wrapped it in so many knots, and they spent so much time wrapping themselves in knots that they could have spent that time doing anything else, like giving Seagal and Keenen Ivory Wayans more time to bounce jokes off of one another or just anything. It's such a shame. Such a shame.
I mean, and I want to see more of Seagal being jokey and humorous and shit like that because. I think people really wanted to see that. They wanted to not have Seagal be so kind of serious about himself. They wanted him to kind of lighten up a bit. And that's where this movie, in bits and pieces, really shine.
Yeah, I agree. It's very much the movie that I have wanted from Seagal. It's not all the way there, but it's closer than anything else has been to the movie that I think would have really had some sustainability for Seagal's career. Because again, like you mentioned, you can only do the stoic, serious action guy so much. You can do it in multiple genres. You can be Clint Eastwood and do it in Dirty Harry and do it in the Westerns and, do the Eiger Sanction and shit like that. Yeah. But Seagal, I don't think he has that range or he never got offered those projects.
No, he never tried.
And so that's not him. But when you see him in this movie, you realize, like you said, you can see it. It's there. It's not all there. It's not as much there as I would want it to be or you would want it to be. But you get to see a version of Seagal in this movie that I think is closer to what I kind of wished he was in a lot of these movies.
There is a seed that is planted and then promptly destroyed.
Yeah, well.
Yeah. Can we talk about the autopsy scene? Because that's a scene that's been in my head since I've seen it. And it was just so fucking weird what Seagal does in that scene. I think they're trying to identify the body or whatever the girl's. And Seagal just takes the scalpel, cuts the girl's breast open, and takes out her implant.
Yeah.
And by the way, the implant is clean and untouched.
Right. Yeah.
That is really, really fucking weird. I mean, I don't think cops do that. Like this.
They're not the coroner. No.
No. I mean, it seemed like it was a very clinical slice into her breast.
Give me that.
Yeah. And he does it so quickly.
Yeah. Give me that.
I'm like, have you done this before?
Well, but that's the thing. Like, again, they don't lean on that in the movie as much as they should. Him being like a former secret black ops agent. They should lean on that more in the movie, and they don't. And that might be one of the ways that the movie's kind of subtly nodding and winking. But I don't know. Some of this is again Seagal doing things like that is just weird, right?
They also don't lean on his family very much.
Right, yeah.
Like the threat to his family isn't touched upon very much. Like we don't even know much about his family.
Why give him a family?
He could just be a loner. Like he could just be a man who wants to be by himself and you could have still made him a Buddhist, but a Buddhist who's in solitude, who just wants to be
I think it just speaks to the lack of foresight that the people who made this movie had in the idea that, like, you don't have to have Steven Seagal having a love interest.
No, I mean...
Frankly, none of the movies that we've seen with him having a love interest have been successful.
Not really.
Erica Leniak feels very forced.
She's in they forced the relationship with him and Erica Leniak in Under Siege. And when Under Siege 2 comes by, she's gone. She's
real gone. In Under Siege 2, they don't even attempt to have a love interest, except it's real weird.
Are you talking about the bartender lady?
Oh no, I was more just talking about the fact that they kind of make Katherine Heigl love interest.
That's creepy.
It's real weird.
And she was like 16 or 17 at the time.
What,
she was like 16 at the time.
I don't like to drink alone. That's my favorite line in that whole movie.
Oh God.
What, you don't like to drink? I don't like to drink alone. Yeah, well, that doesn't have alcohol in it. Dumb bitch. Seagal, that doesn't have any alcohol in it. Well, fine. Katherine Heigl is such a perfect foil for Steven Seagal as an actress.
I mean, because she can play the smart ass.
I was being facetious. She's a very bad actress. I don't find anything I've seen her in to be mildly even entertaining. I'm sorry.
I thought she was fine in Under Siege 2. I did like the back and forth between Seagal and the bartender at that little small part of the film.
I like when Seagal was making that cake in the galley.
Yeah, and then stops because the terrorists have started.
It's my niece's favorite cake. She loves it, man. Doo-wop bop. He's like, that's what he is. He's like one of those like jazz guys, but instead of jazz, he just talks his bullshit. Well, Steven Seagal, bullshit talker.
his Aikido is his jazz, baby.
Break it down for me, baby. Tell me, Lieutenant Jim Campbell. What are we looking for? I'm the Glimmer Man. Yeah. I mean, that's what I will, friend of the podcast, Mike White, always makes the joke about, is that the movie where Steven Seagal plays the Jewish detective, the Glimmer Man. Jonathan Glimmerman. Oh. Dr. Glimmerman.
Dr. Glimmerman?
That's our joke.
That's like when I call Spider-Man Spiderman.
He's great, right?
Mike White?
Yeah, that's what I was asking
awesome.
about. Yeah. This movie's okay, though, yeah?
I mean, it's not... It's a more tolerable Seagal film than we've been watching.
His more recent stuff, sure. I would say this is kind of a logical progression of his early stuff.
It's not as violent or necessarily as like extremely dark.
It's as barely an action movie.
As is Marked for Death or Hard to Kill films. It's very lighthearted. It's like they were trying to make Seven into a buddy cop movie.
Yeah, but again, they missed it completely. That's the movie that they should have made.
A serial killer shouldn't have to have a committee.
Right.
He's a serial killer is a singular, well, sometimes it's more people, but they don't go through a fucking committee to kill people. Like Brian Cox doesn't have to confer with Bob Gutton for the one guy to kill people.
Yeah, it was weird.
It's fucked.
I don't know what they were thinking. Kevin Broadbent, his script. I would love to read his script on this movie because I would love to know how close it is to the script versus the movie. Because again, we know that Seagal comes in and changes things based on what he
loves
wants.
To change things.
Well, he's an idiosyncratic guy. I get it.
Yeah,
I can't give someone a hard time for being weird when this is the industry that weirdos work in.
Well, I want to believe that Broadbent's script is more of what we want.
I don't know. I doubt it.
I don't know how to get a hold of him.
Right, Mr. Nice Broadbent.
I would love to just talk to a lot of writers of Seagal films and just.
I bet they have similar stories to fucking Richards.
Yeah, probably.
At least the people who worked with him early on worked with him being,
Hell, we start a new podcast talking to the writers of the films and call it the Seagal that could have been. I don't know, but the film just really. You're right. It needed a lot of more go-throughs.
They needed an extra pass or two. Again, there's a good movie there. It's a great. Great concept. It's an interesting. Interesting concept, but
this could have been one of Steven Seagal's best films.
It could have. I do not disagree with you when you say that. This could have been the film
that changed people's perceptions of Seagal. This could have been the film that totally put his career in a different, better path. But unfortunately, I mean, he was sabotaged by a terrible, convoluted plot and not giving him more of the comic foil's, ability.
It just needed to be rewritten. It just needed a pass on the actual story, the meat of this movie. Because I think the interactions with the characters are good. There just needed to be more of them. There needs to actually be action in this movie. How's that?
Yeah,
there's one scene. He's a little bit country. I'm a little bit rock and roll. That scene's great. Yeah, but that's about as much as you get.
Pretty much. I mean,
they show the scene in the fucking trailer for the movie.
Yeah, you've pretty much seen the best stuff in the trailer.
Really? Not. You really have.
I mean, I know we talked about this film being one of Seagal's better films. I think that's more of the what could have been. It's more of what could have been than what is what we enjoy about it.
Also, the fact that most of Seagal's movies are not good. They're not traditionally good. They're fun to watch because they're maybe not great. But this, I would say that this hews closest to a film that mainstream audiences would find entertaining and funny.
Yes, because it's not as bloody or violent as his other films. It tries to be more audience friendly.
It's funny.
Say.
It's trying because to be funny.
I mean, you and I both agree that his earliest stuff was really only made for a certain audience.
Yeah, for sure.
And it was not a wide appeal. I mean, they made money. They made a lot of money.
Action movie fans, but that's for action movie fans.
Yeah. I mean, let's not kid ourselves. We can't see Seagal in romantic comedies or shit like that. But I don't know.
I don't know.
Come on.
We could play a character in a romantic comedy as a lead. I don't think so.
I don't know. He could play the love interest's jealous ex-boyfriend.
I mean, at this point, he's playing somebody's dad.
Yeah. I mean,
right.
He's just I don't know. What could have been, man? What could have been? This could have been something just absolutely.
This movie feels particularly bad in how not fun it is.
And it hurts, man. It hurts.
I mean, again, for Steven Seagal, I don't really feel that bad because he still ultimately is a massively successful movie star.
True. I mean, I don't know.
Who did have a fair amount of hits. I mean,
Oh, yeah, shitload of hits.
Yeah.
But, I mean, this was just one of his... I mean, no, On Deadly Ground was a miss, too. I mean, this kind of began the downfall. This was part of the downfall of his trajectory.
Yeah, I mean, this is essentially it. There's one more movie, Fire Down Below, which did even worse than this movie did. So
yeah, that'll be fun to watch.
Well, that movie is it has kind of its own problems. So
yeah, I mean, considering the next film we're going to talk about is a film where he's barely even in it.
What, End of a Gun?
Oh, no. The next classic Seagal film we're going to talk about.
What? Fire Down Below?
What? Isn't it Executive Decision?
No, Executive Decision is technically before this one.
Oh, sorry. Then we'll cut this part out.
The next, so Trevor, on the next episode of On Seagal, what are we talking?
End of a Gun.
It's literally Cartels, but not Cartels. It's the one that has Florian Piercek Jr. in it, but it's the movie he's in that's not Killing Salazar.
Wait, have we watched it yet?
Yes, I have the episode edited and ready to go. That's how I know what it is.
That's how fucking sad this is.
It's the movie where he shoots that woman at the end of the movie. She's about to betray him, and he
that's the one. He
murks her ass at the end of the movie.
I remember that one. Yeah, I remember that one. That's actually the somewhat decent fight scene in the garage at the end, or was that? Yeah,
that's Cartels, isn't it?
I don't fucking know.
Anyway, so that's what we're talking about. End of a Gun. So take us home, my friend.
All right, next time we will be talking about the Steven Seagal action thriller End of a Gun.
It's a movie.
It's definitely a movie. It was shot. It was edited. It was sound. It was definitely a movie.
It was even released somehow.
A script was written. The actor said the lines.
There was a script being written might be a little much. Let's just put it this way. When you listen to that episode, you will hear us having a very hard time distinguishing whether or not we've already seen this movie from another movie that we have seen. So yeah. It's rough.
They meld together.
It may, if not for the fact that China Salesman exists, it might be the worst one we've watched so far.
Oh God, nothing will beat China Salesman. Not a fucking thing will beat China Salesman.
I don't know. Don't say that.
Piece of shit.
You're tempting the universe, Trevor. But yeah,
I dare the Steven Seagal universe to have a film worse than China Salesman.
Well,
I fucking dare the Steven Seagal universe to have a worse movie than that.
You know what?
That movie was a fucking abortion.
That movie was real bad. So until then, Trevor, where can people find you?
You can find me on Twitter and Instagram at Bad Vertigo. And you can also find me from time to time on my lovely co-host podcast, The Culture Cast. And Chris, where can people find you?
cstachiw.com, cstachiw.com. That's my link tree. Go there. That's for all the things I work on. That's where you can find them. As for this show, on Seagal.com, that's where you can go to find the show. Like Trevor said, next episode, we're going to be talking about End of a Gun, which is a newer Steven Seagal movie from 2016. Yep. So until then, make sure to check out the next episode, I guess.